Today I saw a guy on the sidewalk with the Black Knight from Monty Python suit on. It was pretty funny. Animation is truly a unique medium. It's an often time-consuming medium of film where every single frame is worked on, calculated, and crafted. Cinematography is replaced with composition, acting is replaced with voice, and production design is replaced with colorful backgrounds. However, despite how difficult this medium can be, there are still some people who often overlook it. Like, an animated film hasn't been nominated for Best Picture since Toy Story 3 in 2010. Now sure, there are a lot of movies that give the animation medium a bad look.
Eagle, heron, peacock, warrior, mountain, tree, rabbit, fish, locust, king pigeon, and of course, downward dog.
However, animation has brought us some truly unique, creative, strange, and innovative experiences over the years. Although companies like Studio Ghibli, Pixar, Disney, Laika, and occasionally DreamWorks have produced some magnificent animated films, for this video I want to focus on some of the more independent animated films that have popped up over the years. Not just that, I want to focus on the weird and artsy side of animation. The side of animation that can sometimes be overlooked even by animation fans. I want to celebrate this side of animation by providing 10 examples, each of them using the animation medium in a way that's strange and bold. There are of course more than just 10 artsy and weird animated films out there, so if you have a great example of a film like this, leave it in the comment section. Anyways, here we go. Starting with probably the weirdest one first. To put Fantastic Planet as simply as possible, it's like an extremely messed up combination of a Dr. Seuss book and a Salvador Dali painting. This is a film from France and is directed by René Laloux. The animation is spectacular and so unique. The soundtrack is so groovy and it kinda reminded me of King Crimson. The world this movie creates is surreal, bizarre, and dystopian. I was awestruck by the insane creativity on display here, which made the disturbing and brutal aspects of the movie all the more impactful. I also love the allegorical approach this movie takes to address themes of dehumanization and hierarchy. This is a weird yet amazing movie that I'd recommend watching. Son of the White Mare is a breathtaking beast of a movie. This is a film from Hungary and is directed by Marcel Jankovic. First of all, this is one of the most beautiful animated films I've ever seen. The visuals are so colorful and impressionistic, it's like you're looking into an alternate version of Earth. Any frame of this movie could honestly make for a killer psychedelic rock album cover. I also love the story and its many inclusions of Hungarian folklore. Although I can't really say I know much about Hungarian folklore, this movie sure as hell did an exceptional job at getting me interested in the subject. Many aspects of this film are in sets of 3, which is a technique typically found in folklore. The story itself is also just very weird, imaginative, and creative. Yeah, this film is fantastic. It's truly a one-of-a-kind experience. Now, although most of this video is me talking about individual films, I also want to talk about a filmmaker. A filmmaker who was only able to make 4 feature-length movies before passing, but left behind one of the greatest and most influential legacies in Japanese anime. I am of course talking about Satoshi Kon. Satoshi Kon's movies are weird, but he doesn't make weird movies in the same way that other anime directors make weird movies. For example, Hayao Miyazaki's movies are weird in a whimsical and fantasy-like sense, but Satoshi Kon's movies are weird in a more surreal and psychological way. I'll talk more about Kon's director trademarks as I go along. On to the films themselves, starting with my personal favorite of his. Perfect Blue is one of the best psychological horror films of all time. This movie dives into fame, identity, and obsession in a truly breathtaking way. A film that's purposely disorienting and has you questioning the reality of the main character. The editing in this movie is just insane and is mostly responsible for the dreamlike state this movie puts you in. Satoshi Kon's weird way of editing is one of his most recognizable features. Kon was truly a master of the match cut, the screen wipe, and the the insert. If you want to hear more about Satoshi Kon's editing, I highly recommend Every Frame a Painting's video on this legendary animator. I love the animation in this movie, and its dark, moody color palette adds so much to the film's unsettling atmosphere. The electronic score somehow manages to be both eerie and an absolute banger. This movie has many twisted, shocking, disturbing, and creepy moments that have stuck with me ever since my first viewing. Also, that ending was just unbelievable. I love movies that are complex and don't feel the need to explain every plot detail to the audience. Films like that often make for some of the most interesting, mysterious, and emotional experiences out there. This movie is a masterpiece, and I'd highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. Millennium Actress is a beautiful story about love, and it's Satoshi Kon's heartfelt love letter to Japanese cinema. The references to Akira Kurosawa and Godzilla really made me smile. This movie also apparently references the work of Yasujiro Ozu. I haven't seen any of his movies yet, but I'm just going to assume those references would have made me smile too. Just like Satoshi Kon's other movies, the editing in this movie is insane and dreamlike. The animation is gorgeous, expressive, and colorful. Also, that ending was just excellent. It's one of those movies that just puts you in a good mood and makes you appreciate cinema more than you already do. It's an incredible film that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already. Although Tokyo Godfathers is Satoshi Kon's most normal movie, it's still a wild ride. The three main characters are easy to empathize with and are all very fleshed out. The relationship between the trio is also really fun to watch. The animation is beautiful, and I especially love the way this movie uses facial expressions. The music is great and it fits the narrative really well. However, the thing that I think works best about this film is the way it plays with emotions. It's a heartwarming Christmas movie about coincidences and miracles. It has a really funny, zany, and absurd sense of humor. It's a brutal yet honest depiction of homelessness. It has a sentimental atmosphere that's easy to get sucked into. It's a bonkers story where everything almost feels like a dream. Yeah, this film is truly an emotional roller coaster. Overall, this is an incredible movie that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already. Do you want to know what Paprika reminds me of? LSD Dream Emulator for the PlayStation 1. Dr. Chiba, aka Paprika, is such an interesting character, and the way identity is explored through her character is marvelous. Detective Konokawa is also a fantastic character who goes through some joyful character development over the course of the film. The animation is gorgeous and absolutely breathtaking. Every frame of this movie is dripping with imagination and expression. The surrealist and dreamlike imagery that this film has to offer is truly unique. I love the purposely disorienting editing, and I love the weird-ass music. Now, when talking about this movie, many people bring up how it loosely inspired Christopher Nolan's Inception. Personally, I think there are enough differences between the two films to not accuse Inception of being a ripoff. I do find it fascinating, though, to compare the two films because I think they do two very different things better than the other. Paprika excels in the visuals, the style, and the presentation. Inception excels in the writing, the drama, and the storytelling. The storytelling in Paprika is one of the most divisive aspects of the film. The rules of the film's universe are hardly explained, and it's up to the viewer to connect those dots. This film is meant to be off-putting, which makes it pretty easy for some people to feel frustrated by the film. However, I think if you just allow yourself to get sucked into the madness of this film, like I did, you're going to love it. One last thing about Inception: which movie do I prefer? Well, I think I like Paprika a little bit more. I'm a sucker for trippy visuals, what can I say? I find it tragic that Satoshi Kon was never able to make another movie after this one because he was such a talented director. Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and Paprika are some of the most inventive films that the animation medium has to offer. Anyways, Paprika is an incredible and bizarre movie that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already. Mary and Max is a very charming movie, but also not really. This is a film from Australia and is directed by Adam Elliott. Philip Seymour Hoffman gives a fantastic performance in this movie as usual. Although I've loved many of his performances before, this is the one that solidified Philip Seymour Hoffman as one of my favorite actors. His voice is almost unrecognizable in this film, which proves once again that Hoffman was an immense talent gone far too soon. I love the stylized stop motion in this movie. The color palette is very selective and the character designs are so expressive. This film has a very strange and surrealist sense of humor that I really enjoyed. I mean, they have chocolate hot dogs in this universe. Who needs a kidney when you have that? However, this film is also very heartbreaking and gloomy. The film touches on themes of depression, mental illness, and the importance of human connection in a way that's very thoughtful. This is a very bittersweet and unique movie that I'd highly recommend watching. It's Such a Beautiful Day is... where do I even begin with this one? This film is directed by Don Hertzfeldt, who has made quite a bit of short films over the years, especially this one called Rejected.
My anus is bleeding! My anus is bleeding! For the love of God and all that is holy, my anus is bleeding!
It's Such a Beautiful Day, though, is definitely one of my favorite animated films of all time. A brutally honest movie told in such a unique way that's impossible to look away from. The animation and presentation are brilliantly bizarre. Despite being a film comprised of stick figures, the animation still manages to have so much expression. The many experimental effects and choices throughout this film make you feel like you're entering another world or like life is flashing before your eyes. I love the creative use of split screens. I love the poetic way this movie blends animation with live action. I love the music that manages to feel soothing yet also bombastic. But of course, this film is an emotional roller coaster. It's a film that's harsh and philosophical, but it also acts as a shoulder to cry on. This film manages to find a charming sense of humor and a joyous amount of hope in an otherwise existential nightmare. The film is essentially a series of vignettes all centered around life, love, death, mortality, and how strange it is to be anything at all. The film looks at each theme in a beautifully thoughtful and elegant way. This film is a masterpiece and it truly deserves to be checked out by more people.
Bill picked up his new medication, went home, and masturbated for 7 hours.
I talked about Anomalisa pretty recently in my Charlie Kaufman retrospective, but I'll try to talk about it some more here. For those that didn't watch that video, this is a movie about Fragoli syndrome, a rare disorder where someone believes that everyone they meet is the same. I forgot to mention a couple things in that video, like this film has one of the most awkward yet intimate sex scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Probably shouldn't talk about that too much. It also has a trippy, terrifying, and tragic dream sequence that you really just have to see for yourself. It's a good movie, go watch it. And lastly, I have Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This film was directed by Dean Fleischerkamp and is based on a series of YouTube videos he made in the early 2010s. This film was also A24's first family-friendly movie, which I think is pretty cool. It's a whimsical and adorable tale about growing up, told in such a bold and creative way. The film blends stop motion and live action in a gorgeous and unique way. The little micro-world that this movie creates is very amusing, and it takes you back to the time when the world felt almost just as gigantic. The whole film has a childlike and nostalgic sense of wonder, especially in the way Marcel sees the world around her. The film has a really charming sense of humor, but it can also be pretty emotionally vulnerable at times. It has a heartwarming message about making it through our imperfect world with a positive outlook. It's truly a delightful little movie that I'd highly recommend watching. And I think I'm gonna end things there. If any of the movies I talked about sounded interesting to you, check them out. Next video, I'm talking about sex education. Subscribe or something like that. Bye bye.